Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Council Chambers on this beautiful September 23rd day. It's so good to see everybody back. As many of you know, I have missed the last 3 council meetings. Those that are watching via our YouTube channel, please do not judge me. The camera adds 20 pounds. It's not like I gained 20 pounds, just the camera adds 20 pounds. What a great weekend it was. We had our Gather and Grow event, which we saw members of the community come together to plant some trees as sort of our Arbor Day, and also then to gather as part of our Neighbors Day, where we connect our community, plant some trees to reforest it, and also we had a little kind of special event there as well. It was a family came and dedicated a tree in the memory and the honor of their daughter that passed away. So that's one of the things that we do within the town of Stony Plain, that we do have that kind of a program to dedicate benches and trees within our community to kind of acknowledge our loved ones that have gone way too soon. Members of council, there is an agenda before you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Town Council adopt the September 23rd, 2024 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Administration has anything that needs to be added to the current agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing to add at this time.
Okay, thank you. Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. Moving on with our agenda is number 3, was the public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to talk about anything that they want with council. So if anybody wants to come forward with issues, concerns, or just suggestions, they're more than welcome to right now. Administration, has anybody signed up to speak?
Through Your Worship, no one has registered this evening.
Thank you. Anybody in the gallery like to speak to council on anything that's not on the current agenda? Okay. See none, we'll move on to number 4 of our agenda, which is presentations and delegations. And today we are graced by 2 great groups in our community. The first one is the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Center. So welcome, gentlemen. There is a sign-up sheet there, so if you can do that quickly, and then also then introduce yourself to the members of council and those that are watching, please.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Thank you for your time on the agenda this evening to present our 2025 corporate plan and budget for council's information. Joining me this evening is Mr. Rob Haig, our board chair, and so he's here as well if you have any questions that are more board related. So this evening we'll be covering the items that you see on the screen. They are the TLC's peak priorities, the key objectives for 2025. We'll jump into our detailed budget, revenues and expenses, talk a little bit about our cost recovery rate, which I know councils are always keen to hear about, speak to our capital and infrastructure requests for 2025, and then we'll break down the contribution from the municipal partners in terms of operating capital and infrastructure. So the TLC Board of Directors has a long-term strategic plan in which there are 4 peak priorities, those being personnel, engaging stakeholders, asset management, and key service levels. And those really drive the work that we do each and every year. And as we're building our corporate plan, they all tie back to these 4 key peak priorities. So in 2025, a number of our key additional focus areas, in addition to our operating, will be under personnel, continuing on with our employee mental health and well-being. For a couple of years now, it's been a very heavy focus, and we've done a number of initiatives with our staff. We'll be, hopefully this November, at long last, going through a core certification. And so our plan for 2025 will do some post-core initiatives, and also following up on any items that maybe we need a bit more focus on from the audit. Additionally, we'll be providing our staff recognition program with a bit of a refresh. Switching to engaging stakeholders. So, of course, as you all know, we've had a long-standing operational agreement with the town of Stony Plain to operate the outdoor pool. So looking at more of a long-term re-upping of that agreement. We also will be engaging or following up on some stakeholder engagement activities that we're conducting this year. As well as a comprehensive program and services review that, again, we're starting this year and we'll be following up with next steps next year. In our asset management, as always, every year we update our long-term capital and infrastructure plans so that municipalities are aware of what's coming to end of life and what the cost might be in each and every year over that 10-year span, and we share that information with our municipal general manager counterparts. As well, we're going to be conducting a fitness equipment life cycle plan update, so looking at all of our components of our fitness equipment. We've been very fortunate to have support to have a fairly aggressive replacement plan, and we're looking to extend the life on some of those units and try and reduce the annual cost to the municipalities. Under our key service levels, again, following up on that key service level review that I mentioned before, we're going to be expanding online options for customers. So with our upgrade to our IntelliLeisure software, we're able to provide more and more options for customers online, whether it's renewing their memberships, purchasing memberships, renting in our facility, as well as the program registration that we've always had. We're going to be looking at internal customer experience training, so looking at some in-house training to provide consistency across departments to make sure that all the customers or patrons that are in the facility, whether they're in the aquatics area, in our arenas, that our staff are following the same kind of expected service levels with them. And then we're going to shift the focus a little bit to our youth. As we all know, important demographic in our community with our up-and-comers. And so looking at a youth volunteer program within the facility. We had one a number of years ago and really looking to rejuvenate it since COVID. And then working with our partners on a youth event and program engagement. So we've hosted a couple of community events that were youth-related with our municipal partners and looking to expand on that. So jumping into our operating revenue. So our revenues, we're looking at just over 6.4 million for 2025, which is up over 2024, our current year. Our expenses of just over 8.6 million. Leaving us with a cost recovery rate of about 74.44%. So breaking that out a little bit into further detail. So our revenue areas have 4 key categories. Our memberships, programs, or passes and admissions, programs and services, facility rentals, and then administration, which captures a lot of our grants, sponsors, tenant rent, and that sort of thing. And so we're looking at each item, you'll see that each one has going to be projected to increase in 2025 over our approved 2024 budget, save for administration, and that's just a couple of grants that weren't as lucrative for 2025. Overall, though, our revenues are going to go up from just under 6.2 million to just over 6.4 million. 3-year trend, so as you can see, they're gradually increase each and every year. The facility really is back to pre-pandemic levels and even beyond that in some instances, and so it's positive. Lots of vibration, positive vibrations in the facility, which is awesome to see. Just this past weekend, we had a couple of special events, one on the north field, one on the south, and so lots of stuff happening at the same time. Switching to expenses, of course, on the flip side of that, as our revenues go up, so do the costs of running the facility. And so salaries and benefits, we're looking at just over 5 million there. It's an increase of about 4.8% over 2024. That's comprised of some addition, about a 2.0 FTE addition, and that's not necessarily new positions, that's just the amount of part-time hours that we're increasing to meet the needs of our operational expectations right now. Most of that's in aquatics. We've seen a huge return both in public swims, swim club and those types of things, as well as our programs in the facility. So we're having to up those hours to meet those needs, as well as cost of living adjustments and step increases for our staff. Materials, goods, and supplies is up slightly. It's about just over 2%, which is primarily inflationary in nature. Nothing too substantial in terms of change there. And our utilities, we're putting up a modest increase, a very slight increase. We're pretty confident based on what we're seeing in 24. Our utilities are actually coming in slightly under budget, and that's a testament to a couple of things, one being our green initiatives. So a number of years ago when we did the LED lighting upgrade, we've updated our arena chiller and condenser with, of course, high efficiency units. And then recently, just this past spring, installed Real Ice, which is a water conditioning system that allows us to do cold water floods in the arenas and no longer having to use a boiler. So that saves some energy there as well. So all told, expenses are about $8.65 million. And again, just like on the revenue side, we're seeing a slight increase each and every year. And again, that's just to maintain that service level. Cost of doing business does go up year over year. So cost recovery rate, as mentioned before, we're looking at projected 74.44%, slightly up from 2024. And in 23 at the year end, we actually saw it slightly higher than was budgeted at the time. So positive signs there that we're staying around just under that 75% cost recovery rate. On the capital side, just one request this year that's just our fitness equipment replacement for just under $80,000. Over the past number of years, I've noted in my budget presentations that as a facility ages, of course, we see a lot of our key components coming to end of life, and some of those are the more expensive items that a facility would need in order to stay relevant and in good operational shape. 2025's infrastructure request is just under $1.4 million, and that major items under there are phase 2 of our membrane roof replacement. We're starting phase 1 actually tomorrow. The company is coming to site, so that'll be exciting to get that first phase underway and completed before the snow flies, hopefully. Locker retrofit phase 3. This was initially planned for this year. However, due to some challenges we experienced during phase 2, we took a kind of a step back and reassessed before moving forward, and we shifted those funds over to do more in our roofing replacement phase 1, which allowed some flexibility there. Direct control system, so our HVAC control system is quite outdated, and actually the parts are no longer to be able to be attained. They're obsolete. The highest priority work was done this year, and we're finishing off with the project next year. Number of air handling units and makeup air units are scheduled, were well beyond their life expectancy, and so over the last number of years, we've replaced 3 or 4 at a time, and we're doing the same in 2025. The front entrance, the sliding doors there, again, are well beyond their life expectancy, and they're becoming more and more problematic. And so we want to get those replaced so we don't have any downtime and challenging times for folks getting in the building. And then up in the multi-purpose room, which we converted a couple of years ago, we've seen a significant increase in facility rentals in that area. And with that comes the need to have its own set of equipment, tables and chairs and that sort of thing, instead of bringing it down from other storage units. So we're looking to add a single wall extension to be able to create a storage space in there to get that stuff kind of out of sight, out of mind, and allow for a more usable space and less concerns around having tables and chairs for people to bump into. So the contribution summary as a whole, as you can see, we're looking at about $3.6 million, which is an increase of just over $400,000, $445,000. Primarily, most of that, though, is, of course, in infrastructure with a slight operating budget increase as well. And then capital has seen a decrease due to the nature of it just being capital equipment this year. So splitting that out into each of the 3 municipalities, and of course, as council is aware, this is based on the memorandum of agreement, and the formula is based on the last federal census that was completed. And so the town of Stony Plain is 24.8% of that, and so the request going into 25 will be $900,000 total for the town of Stony Plain. So just to wrap up, our internally generated revenues, have increased by just under 4%. Balancing that are the expenses of about 3.6% and the cost recovery again at 74.44. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. That was very informative, and definitely appreciate the slide deck that was sent earlier. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lenny. Great report. But I do have a question just in regards to the outdoor pool. So my concern stems from I was there this summer, and speaking with one of the customers on the pool deck, she mentioned that she's actually from St. Albert, and that she just loves the outdoor pool, and registered her child in our pool for swim lessons. So I know swim lessons being the crunch that they are, my concern is, of course, as things go online, of course, sort of the old-fashioned catch to that was you had to be in town, or being in town helped you get your kid into the swim lessons because you had to go down physically. Now, in the absence of that and everything online, you do potentially have people from outside the community, and I know because the outdoor pool isn't necessarily we just contract you guys to run it. You don't necessarily pay the maintenance and all the rest of that. So my question is, is that even is that even correct? Do we have would you even be able to capture that when people register their children? Do we know if they're from in the community, outside of the community? And, like, did I just happen to speak to the one lady that registered outside the community, or is that a common thing? Would you be able to tell me?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Mallard and the rest of the council, we certainly can capture that information. When they are registering, we take their physical address into account. We see the same thing at the TLC. There's registrants from outside of the community. We have members from outside of the community as well. Last I checked, and I can certainly provide an updated count through Mr. Hill, it was about an 85-15 split of within the tri-municipal region versus outside of the tri-municipal region for overall programs. I don't recall us ever splitting out Stony Plain outdoor pool specifically, but we certainly can pull that information and send that through to council.
Okay, and I'm just curious, do we have anything in policy that gives preference to residents of the tri-region to?
We currently do not. The only thing that we have is a member, non-member registration difference. So when you're a member of the TLC, you get 2 days advanced registration, and then it's open to full public the 2 days later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Meyer. Any other questions for clear understanding? Councilor Plechko.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Thank you, Lenny and Rob, for coming this evening. It's always a pleasure to see the Tribe make a presentation to council and the needs for the community. I'm going to refer to page 40 and 45, kind of the two things that go together. It's the cost recovery that is always surprising to me, and I've been asked many a times, why is the cost recovery not higher? What could we do at that facility to be able to recover the cost better, so the operating costs would come in more in line, so it's not as large a cost to the taxpayer?
Your worship, through to Councillor Plechko and the rest of council. 74.44% is actually a fairly reasonable cost recovery rate for a facility the type of the TLC. The other unique, attribute that we have that some of the municipally owned facilities and operated facilities have is a lot of those peripheral services such as HR, finance, IT, those are supported across the entire organization, whereas we have to provide those on our own. So we have a full-time, those staff in place 100% at our cost, which drives up the cost of operating expenses. In a municipal setting, say, in St. Albert, those costs would be absorbed over the breadth of the organization. So that's part of it. And in the life that I've been at the TLC, it has reduced slightly over time, but I've seen it anywhere from 74 to 78% in the years that I've been there. Certainly a number of years ago, it used to be in the low 80s, but as the costs go up, it also becomes, it's that balance of diverting those costs onto the facility users and risking it becoming unaffordable for our members and patrons to be able to attend. So it is a bit of a balancing act. The two facilities that are more like ours, where they're shared with multiple municipalities, I've reached out to them, and one of them is similar in nature. The other is a bit higher for sure, in the low 80s still. They've got a different style of corporate revenue generation, and so it's certainly something we can continue to investigate. Our teams do their best to mitigate the expenses. I'm pretty proud of our crew. Usually we're under budget in those areas, and the departments work hard to find ways to reduce those costs. And we're also trying to get more and more creative. We'll have a new space, the multi-purpose room. We're out looking for a sponsor for that, so that would provide additional revenue. So we are always looking for new opportunities, and of course always looking for grants to access as well to reduce the cost to councils.
Thank you, and then definitely appreciate that comment and good question there, Councillor Pleshko. I think Councillor Hansard and I do remember the time when the TLC was recovering at the kind of low 80s. I think that has a lot to do with the kind of the newness of the facility. As we all know, when we build new facilities, the upkeep and maintenance are a lot lower than when you're over 23 years old now, I believe, is the TLC. So definitely seeing through the capital plan and the infrastructure is a lot of replacement that probably wasn't on the books 15 to 20 years ago. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I actually had some questions along the lines of Councillor Plechko's, and then actually you spoke to market comparisons in terms of cost recovery, so I do appreciate that. So I'll take it a little bit of a different direction. The last 3 years, I think it was page 40, there was a relatively consistent cost recovery percentage. Is there a target cost recovery that you sort of operate under and manage user fees and costs for programming and that sort of thing to ensure that you maintain within a specific range for cost recovery, or how we've been able to maintain that, I guess, will be the question.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson and the rest of the council. Currently, the board doesn't have necessarily a set target. We would like to see it somewhere in the 73 to 75 range for sure. We don't have anything on the books formally. We do our best to have it as high as possible always, and it just seems to be able to trend within that 74%, give or take. And so we have seen our revenues continue to increase over the last number of years. We're hoping that that trend continues, but you also, when we're budgeting, we also budget cautiously just in the event that there's a downturn. And those are, just like a New Year's resolution where all of a sudden those revenues are plateauing or, maybe even dipping down a bit. We've seen some decrease in some programs, and so we're trying to balance that out with increases in other areas. So trying to keep it within that range and obviously being cognizant of our operating request of council. Those are the ones that are truly a cost sharing, so to speak, whereas the others, the capital infrastructure, are always 100% funded by the municipalities. So on the operating side, we definitely try to keep it, the increase request in check. 2023 to 2024, we really keep that cost at zero increase, and this year we've had to come back and ask for about 2.5%. So.
Perfect, and I appreciate that. You had mentioned a couple of market comparisons, with our cost recovery not including some of those capital and infrastructure requests. Would that be similar to the other facilities that you referenced earlier?
Your Worship, to Councillor Anderson and the rest of the council, yeah, typically cost recovery is solely on operating expenses.
Okay, thank you. And then just wondering if you have this information, but a bit of a market comparison to similar facilities in terms of our user fees and our program fees and that sort of thing. Are we comparable to what residents of other municipalities, would see in regards to the user fees for their recreation amenities?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson and the rest of the council, we do a regional review comparison, and we match it up with about 4 or 5 different municipalities. And when the fees and charges go to our board of directors for approval, those numbers are brought forward, and we're within the range for sure of the region. Again, some slightly higher, some slightly lower, and it depends on their approach and their, whether it be youth programs and that sort of thing, have perhaps more contributions made towards them specifically, but I'd say we're in the ballpark for sure within the capital region.
Okay, thank you for that. And I do have one more question, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Come back to you.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Councillor Lyons, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going back to your peak, and you're talking about key service levels, and your comment about expanding the online options for customers in 2025. I can vouch for myself and say when it came time to registering for general public. It was a very difficult process as the systems kept crashing. Is there a plan in your online options to look at how to prevent your site from crashing, or do we feel that adding more online options are going to cause any type of hindrance?
Your worship, through to Councillor Lawrence and the rest of council. The last 2 registration periods, we've increased our computer capacity. Not aware of any crash, so I'll have to take that back. It seemed to be quite smooth from what I was receiving feedback from our internal staff. No different than a lot of sites where there's a lot of activity at once. There's going to be slower periods of time. You know, I went to buy tickets this morning on Ticketmaster, and it took me a while to get through. But on that non-member day, it certainly is a huge amount of activity coming through. But we are working with our IT department as well as IntelliLeisure to increase those services. We're aware of other municipalities who have also had experience recently. I believe it was Leduc that also had like few-hour delay in getting back up and running. So we're always aware of that and have our IT on hand and on site on registration days just to try to prevent any concerns and issues. And we're always working with our patrons as well to remind them to make sure that, you know, their accounts are up to date, their accounts are linked with their children that they're trying to register for, and all those types of things to prevent any delays in those. So certainly I'll take that back though for feedback.
Awesome, thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence, and Councillor Hansard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lenny and Rob, what a pleasure to have you in council chambers. So thanks for coming tonight. I wanted to commend you, Lenny, and your staff and the board for working so diligently to get your revenues up in a really good range. This year, in 2023, not this year, I hope the numbers will be even higher yet for 2024, but 9.2 million versus 7.9 million in 2022. So that's really a nice increase in revenues. Of course, the expenses go up because the cost of everything has gone up. But I can remember lots of discussion around this facility and others that people have a tendency to want things to be a profit-making venture. But the Tri-Leisure Center is in a unique position because the public you serve is not there necessarily for that facility to make a huge profit. It's not a profit-generating corporation. It's a service-oriented facility that serves the people of the region. And just as a reminder to my fellow councilors and others who may be watching this now and in the future, these kinds of facilities aren't necessarily going to be totally 100% cost recovery, so that in essence it costs you nothing to have that facility, because it's a service we provide to the residents of the region. And that's the difference between a good community and a really great community. We're about providing these kinds of facilities. The same would be said of the new recreation facility that will be built in Stony Plain. It's not always meant to be a cost recovery, profit-making venture. It's here to serve. And we have to remember who we're serving, because the money we take from the public to run these are the very people we're here to serve. So with that bit of wisdom on the table for people who contemplate the cost of these facilities, I wanted to ask you specifically, from yours or your board's perspective, are you at capacity in any area, in any aspect of that facility where you would say, we're really stretching things because the region has grown so much that we are hard-pressed to take in new people? Could you answer that question for us?
Mayor Choi, through you to Councillor Hansard and the rest of council. That's a loaded question for sure. Couple different areas that I'll start with, and if Mr. Haig has anything to add from the board's perspective, certainly can do so. So from a membership perspective, there is a bit of a peak or a threshold that you have to be cognizant of, or else the facility gets too busy in the fitness center and up on the track and everything, and then people aren't having as an enjoyable experience, or maybe can't get on the pieces of equipment that they want to get onto. And so there certainly is a peak, and back earlier in the facility's lifespan, it was about, between 5,500 and 6,000 members was thought to be kind of that range that if it's any more than 5,500, we start to see people leaving because it's too busy of a facility. We're in that range right now. We're definitely over in between 4,800 and just over 5,000 depending on the month. So we're in that range. From the program perspective, as Councillor Lyons indicated, swimming lessons is always in every municipality or in every area a high demand program, and in specific certain program levels as it carries on. And so seeing new opportunities like Wahoo Swimming coming into the region should hopefully reduce some of that pressure, because it is a bit of a three-legged stool, so to speak, in programs in the pool, facility user groups like our swim clubs and our own junior lifeguard club wanting more time, and public access, public swims and family swims. And so it's trying to find that balance. And so, as that pressure may come off in the swim lesson side, perhaps we can offer more in those other two components. So in terms of the facility rental side, I think we're fairly busy. Obviously, prime time is maxed out and no different than any other facility in the region. And I don't see that changing, even with the addition of the two new recreation amenities in the region within the next couple of years. Special events, we've always, as weekends open up, we try to recruit other events to come in there. And I mentioned just this last weekend, we had two totally different events going on in the facility. We had a boxing event and a karate event on two different fields at the same time. And so other times we've got a swim meet and a hockey tournament of some kind happening. So it is a unique thing, and it's tough to say, are we at capacity? Some days, yes. And other days we're at a reasonable amount of being busy. So I think there's always opportunity for more, but at the same time, as the new amenities come on, that may spread out and provide new opportunities for groups that in the past maybe have been turned away because we just don't have the capacity.
Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Any more questions for clear understanding before I go back? Okay. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this might be a bit of a silly question, but it didn't make sense to me when I read through, and so I figured it was worth the ask. So I'm backing up here to the 2023 annual report. It comes down to page, I think, 15 in our agenda package. It's the year in review, wellness and fitness, excuse me, for children and youth, and then it looks like for adults as well. The part that's tripping me up is we have sort of three items here: registered programs offered, and then registered programs taken, and then program participants. What's the difference between offered and taken? Is that, we'll just leave it there, and then I'll see if there's a follow-up.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Anderson and the rest of the council, those would be classes that didn't end up running. And so 83 were offered and 63 actually went ahead and ran based on the minimum numbers of participation.
Okay, so if we're looking at 2023, so I think this is the adult one, 119 offered and 64 taken, so a little better than half. And so does that mean that other 40% or 45%, whatever that works out to, you just kind of got funneled into a different program or didn't have registration at all? I think, that was my expectation, is that what that was? But it just seems like a high number of programs being offered that aren't actually being engaged by the membership. And so just looking for a couple of comments there.
Absolutely, Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson. We're seeing a trend, not only in our facility, but others, when it comes to the fitness classes. More and more interest in spontaneous drop-in activity, as opposed to registered programs, whereas a number of years ago it was the reverse. There was still a number of folks wanting to drop in when they could and take those classes, but back then they were also wanting to ensure that they had a spot. because of course with the drop-in class, there's a maximum number, and so if you're dropping in and you're getting there a bit too late, a lunch hour adult shinny, for example, is if you're not there an hour before, you're probably not getting in. And so we're starting to offer more drop-in programs, which of course are free with membership, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We're not gaining new revenue, but our members are being attracted to those programs, which is a value added within that membership. Children and youth is a bit different. We're also working hard. Our teams are seeing a decline in some of the classes. I was actually just speaking with our supervisor this morning and seeing a decline in some programs. Some of our staple programs are staying steady, like our preschool program and that sort of thing. And so they're working hard to get creative and see what the new trendy type of programs are going to be and try to capture that. And hopefully we'll see that within our comprehensive review of programs and services in the region and service levels as well. So we're hoping to glean some information from that work as well.
Perfect, and I appreciate actually the follow-up there on the children and youth side, because that was my next question. 150 programs offered in 2022, down to 83 in 2023, and so it looks like Rob gets to go on TikTok and find out what the new trends are to offer those new programs. But no, I appreciate the insight and clarity. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I'll just add to that because I do have a question on the same page. In terms of the number of programs offered for child and youth, definitely there's a 44% drop from the year prior. So has staff reviewed some of the offerings to maybe offer different programs? Because that's a huge drop from offering 150 to 83. Even though
Yeah, certainly it's something we're continuing to monitor and look at. Our teams are working hard to, again, find those new trendy programs or what will bring folks in. And some are just testament of capturing that year's niche, so to speak. We offer things like the Home Alone Safely and those types of programs, and sometimes those just don't, either it's not a popular weekend for it to offer, could be that we're just not capturing that. So again, that program service review, we're hoping to glean some information there. And still lots of folks coming through the facility and lots of use going on. It's just finding that programs that are in demand for sure, and we're hoping to get that out of that review.
Okay, and thank you for that line of question, Councillor Anderson. So I'll just ask members of council to turn to page 20 in terms of kind of supports what administration has just said here in terms of drop-in use and spontaneous use. We can see that the member and pass holder from 2022 to 2023 was a 24% increase, and also with daily admissions, it was also roughly 120,000 daily admissions in 2022, and there was 147,000 in 2023. So I think it goes to echo what you've said, that people are looking for more spontaneous drop-in and not the programming side where you have to commit to a certain time and date. So thank you for that. Any more questions from administration? Okay. On page 24 of our council package, I was reading through it, and the financial summary has a comparison from 2021 and 2022. Is there a reasoning why that is compared to those 2 years and not the 23 year?
I'm sorry, Your Worship, I don't have the same page numbers as you. Which page are you at?
Page 24 on our package, so that would be page 18 on your presentation.
That's a typo. In the above number, the graph is correct, so 22, 23, and those numbers should be 22 and 23. So we'll capture that and repost it.
Okay, thank you. I thought maybe there was a reasoning why 1 year was used and not another year.
No, just a simple miss on our part. We'll make sure that that's corrected.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No, thank you much for your presentation, and definitely thank you, Rob and Lenny, for your work at the TLC. I think I can say for most of council that we're proud of what the work that's done at the TLC. And in terms of cost recovery, 75%, it is huge in terms of what other facilities are recovering. Most facilities are recovering in the low 60s, and that is with administrative support in terms of HR, banking and financial stuff, so, and even IT. To have the TLC, to have that all within the TLC and not coming to the municipalities for that shows a lot of good fiscal planning and restraint in terms of planning. So thank you very much. We continue to look forward to having that cost recovery and the work that is done to provide some access for our residents. So thank you. Well, I didn't want to speak for all of council. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll finish the presentation of 4.1, which is the Trans-Alberta Tri-Leisure presentation and 2025 budget presentation. Now moving on to 4.2, which is the Stony Plain Public Library 2025 funding presentation. So welcome to the table. Again, please introduce yourself to members of council, and then you can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor Choi and members of council. My name is Brenda Spitzer. With me is Don Horn on my extreme right, I guess your left, and Lena Kelly, our director. We are very grateful to be here presenting the work our library has accomplished since we last updated you in June, and we're excited to share with you our plans for 2025. Before we begin, we would like to take a moment to recognize how far this library has come in almost 80 years of operation, a milestone that we're going to be celebrating in 2025. The Stony Plain Public Library started as a project of the United Church Young People's Club. It first opened in January of 1945 on 50th Street with 500 books on the shelves. Over the years, we have been in a variety of locations, including the hotel dining room, the town hall above the fire hall, the community center, the former recreation office on 51st Avenue, in Forest Green Plaza on 52nd Avenue, and ultimately in the present location on Main Street. The Stony Plain Women's Institute sponsored the library when it came under the Provincial Library Act in 1948. We are planning to celebrate this incredible milestone in a unique way. Each month, we will be presenting a gift to the residents of Stony Plain. We are excited to announce that our first gift will be the elimination of late fees for our birthday year starting January 1st.
"2024 has been a year of tremendous growth for Stony Plain Public Library. This fall, we will be debuting several new programs in response to needs we are seeing in the community from newcomers, job seekers, and families. We will be establishing resume support for job seekers, ESL conversation circles, digital literacy programming, and new preschool early literacy programming on Saturdays for working families. These programs would not be possible without our strong relationships with community partners such as Tricala and the Braden Centre for Career Advancement. We are also seeking partnerships with groups or organizations such as Passages Midwifery to reach new and expectant parents to ensure they are aware of the support and resources available to them and their children. This is helping us further our plan of service goal number 1 of building lifelong learners. We are also working to improve internal processes. The Stony Plain Public Library Board completed a comprehensive risk assessment this summer, which has led to many changes. We have recently engaged the services of an HR consulting firm to ensure our HR processes, documentation, and policies are up to date. They will also provide support to administration in ensuring Stony Plain Public Library remains an excellent place to work, goal number 4 of our plan of service. Additionally, Dr. Margaret Law will be back this fall to help the board with a compensation philosophy and total compensation review. This project will help us ensure that our compensation practices are sustainable and adequate to maintain our most valuable asset, which is our staff.
In preparing for this presentation, we cross-referenced our current projects and future plans with the town's municipal strategic plan. We found several areas of alignment between our actions in 2024 and our plan for 2025. This doesn't come as a surprise because the town's strategic plan was a major part of the development of our plan of service last year. However, for the sake of time, we would like to focus on 3 areas of the strategic plan that our work at the library has directly supported and where we would like to grow in 2025.
The town of Stony Plain commits to pursuing partnerships and advocating with regional entities, municipalities, and other orders of government to provide infrastructure, programs, and services for a growing urban municipality. In 2024, we have started rebuilding many collaborative relationships within the town and tri-region area. For example, we partnered with Tricala and our tri-region library colleagues to provide a welcome day for newcomers to Canada last Friday. We have been in close contact with community and social development to support their initiatives with displays and program space, and we have just begun visiting the youth center and are excited to continue growing this relationship and supporting youth in Stony Plain, alongside the skilled and caring staff at the center. For 2025, we would like to be a part of the key actions supporting this commitment. We would like to begin reestablishing relationships with local First Nations in partnership with the other tri-region libraries. While we have connected with Skydancer Indigenous Cultural Centre, we would like to build a stronger relationship with them and find out ways to collaborate on programs and services. We would like to be able to consistently send staff to town and regional events, something that has been a struggle for us this past year. We would also like to be able to conduct a full review and evaluation of programs and partnerships to ensure our programs meet community needs while balancing staff capacity. The town of Stony Plain commits to fostering a sense of community belonging and inclusion. In 2024, we hosted many events and community groups who made use of our space. Our adult programs and community groups welcome folks from all backgrounds and are often a way for those who have recently relocated to Stony Plain to meet new people and build community. We have also provided opportunities for folks of all ages and abilities to volunteer at the library, from those with disabilities to newcomers to Canada to retirees. For some, this has led to skills they could use for future employment. We are also an employer of choice for youth. For our recent student positions, we had many amazing applicants, and we were truly blown away by the enthusiasm of youth to get involved in our library. Finally, I would like to share a story with you about how the library has supported our community and inclusion in Stony Plain. For many months at the beginning of the year, we observed a young man making use of our facility each and every day. Our staff connected with him and discovered that he was currently homeless and trying to find work. With support from staff, he was able to take online training provided to him from the Braden Center. He completed his training and through his hard work managed to buy a vehicle, begin driving for Uber Eats, and eventually get employment in Northern Alberta. Along the way, he shared his struggles and successes with us at the library. We were his community support and cheerleaders. While he was already well connected with services in town to meet his basic needs, he used the library as a comfortable space to learn and connect. He has given us permission to use this story because of the connections he made with staff, who he felt were a friendly support system to him. Fortunately and unfortunately, we do not see him often anymore since he has gained employment, but he has promised to come back and visit and keep us updated. For 2025, we would like to continue this important work of connecting with and serving the community. We would like to continue to employ youth ages 14 to 17 and will be adding summer positions for high school students. We are looking to expand our staffing with a dedicated team member to help us with developing and maintaining partnerships with community organizations, particularly those serving youth. We have just started our relationship with the Youth Center and with the Stony Plain Youth Network, and we believe that there are lots of ways we could work together to engage with young people in Stony Plain. Finally, as Brenda mentioned, we will be going fine-free in 2025. This action will reduce barriers to accessing the library for folks from all walks of life, but particularly for families and those experiencing poverty. We look forward to giving this gift to the residents of Stony Plain.
The town of Stony Plain commits to strengthening our vibrant business community. Over the past few years, we've developed strong relationships with our downtown business neighbors. When we're able, we promote local businesses on our social media and have partnered with them during summer reading program to host scavenger hunts and story walks. We've also retooled our Wayfinder screen at the front of the library to become an interactive display highlighting local businesses, the town event guide, and upcoming library programs. This display has become a highlight of library visits, and many patrons will browse through the attractive touchscreen while visiting the library or waiting in line at the service desk. SPPL continues to provide access to high-speed and secure internet, helping patrons affected by limited digital infrastructure availability. Our meeting rooms and stable internet connection have been used to conduct interviews and training by local businesses and job seekers, and patrons can access our public computers, printing, scanning, and faxing for a low cost.
We have heard feedback that other businesses would like to work with us outside of the downtown core. In 2025, we will begin establishing relationships with businesses across Stony Plain and explore innovative ways to work together. We will continue to grow our existing relationships with local businesses and promote them with our programs, social media, and display opportunities. Finally, we will begin upgrading our public computers to newer models. Patrons will have faster and more reliable public computer access. We would also like to fulfill one of the requests from our community engagement survey, extend our opening hours on Saturdays, allowing patrons more time to access our computers and Wi-Fi connection, as well as our many other resources.
For the 2025 operating budget, we are requesting an increase of $98,000 to our operating budget. This year's budget, even with an increase, will likely operate at a slight deficit of around $4,000, which will be offset by a small surplus from 2024's budget due to staffing vacancies. We are anticipating steady grant revenue from the province and Parkland County. Our service revenue will drop due to the discontinuation of late fees. However, we've been seeing this revenue stream decline anyway due to changes in loan periods for certain items. We will also be moving $28,000 from our capital reserve for necessary technology upgrades and furniture fixes, which will be a one-time expense. We are seeing expenses rise due to inflation and staff grid movement. On the next slide, we'll break down the $98,000 request in more detail. In 2024, SPPL ran a deficit budget offset from surpluses gained from vacancies in the director and deputy director positions. The 2025 request will allow us to almost completely eliminate this deficit. Because of staff turnover, SPPL has a very young staff. However, with staff stabilizing, we're now retaining staff long enough for them to move up the grid. We're also factoring in a 3% cost of living increase to keep up with inflation. SPPL has several contracts for required services such as janitorial services, equipment licenses, and computer software licenses. We're anticipating a 3% inflationary increase to these services, including our largest contract for janitorial services. We would also like to add a part-time position partway through the year to help us to work on some of the goals of our plan of service and the town's strategic plan, as mentioned earlier in our presentation. Oh, yeah. Our funding request will have the following impact on our services. First of all, it will allow us to maintain existing services, partnerships, and staffing levels. It will also eliminate our deficit budget, ensuring future increases can be put directly towards services. We will be able to reliably send staff to community outreach events, something that has been difficult for us to juggle with the daily operations of the library. And finally, we would like to open some additional hours on Saturday, as was requested in our community feedback sessions when we were preparing our plan of service.
Thank you very much for all of your time. We'll be pleased to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for your presentation, and definitely love to see the ongoing collaboration and growth of the Stony Plain Public Library. Thank you, ladies. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. Councilor Loynes, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Just going back to page 56 in our budget, or in our package, I apologize, looking at your 2025 budget overview, you made a comment about roughly $4,000 deficit for the 2025 year, but you said it would be covered by the 2024 budget. But when you scroll down to the next page, it says there's a $14,000 deficit for 2024. So I'm confused if there's a surplus in 2024 or a deficit in 2024.
Thank you for your question. So when we made the 2024 budget, we anticipated a deficit budget, more significant than what we saw on this sheet. We were able to move some money from 2023 to take care of that. We've had a lot of staff vacancies this year, and so that will offset some of that cost in that area. Did I get your whole question?
So will the 2024 deficit budget be 14,000 or would it actually be 18,000?
The 2024 deficit budget, we're on track to have a small surplus this year because of earlier staffing vacancies. So that will offset the 4,000 that we're anticipating next year. We'll move that into the following year's operating budget. Yeah. Sorry about that.
I'm going to leave that there for a second then.
Okay.
Okay, I'll add on because I have this also raised in my questions. So I just heard that there might be a small operating surplus for 2024, but yet here it says that there's going to be a deficit of 14,000.
So in planning for next year's budget, we're hoping to have all of our positions fully staffed for the entire year, which will result in a deficit budget. This year, we had also hoped for the same thing, but we had significant vacancies across our full-time positions in our library assistant role, and then also a long-term leave taken by the deputy director, which resulted in a large cost savings to us just for this year, though. We're hoping that we can stay fully staffed for next year.
Okay, so that'd be the 2025 budget year, you'd be fully staffed. But I'm still confused on the fact that I just heard that there would be a slight surplus in 2024, but your request for 2025 states that there's a 14,000 deficit from the 2024 budget.
Yeah.
So just for clarity on that, because had they have been fully staffed, they would have incurred the $14,000.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Laurie. Yes, we were anticipating a deficit budget this year because if we had remained fully staffed for the entire year, when I made this budget back in January, we would have had a deficit that we would have drawn upon from reserves to fill. Because of significant vacancies and difficulty filling those positions, we will have a slight surplus, but then next year we're hoping to be fully staffed with all the positions that currently exist in the library, which would result in a deficit.
Okay, I'll come back to that. Councilor Hansard.
Okay. Your council appointee wants to speak, but he'll have to wait, I guess. I didn't make that decision. I'm just curious. First of all, thank you for being here, and I'm glad to see such positive information coming from you. One of the things I often wonder is, have you seen an uptick or a decrease in the number of seniors using the library since you moved to the downtown location versus where you were located at Forest Green Plaza?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Brenda.
All three of us are fairly new to the library since we've moved, so it's pretty difficult for us to go back to the Forest Green numbers. But Lena would probably let you know how we're doing right now, currently, with the number of seniors coming in.
I think one way that we can tell that there are significant senior populations using our libraries is the popularity of our collections in certain areas, right? There's certainly interest among seniors for topics such as Westerns, large print books, and we are seeing increased circulation in those areas. And we've actually moved those collections to the front of the library to make it easier for our senior population to access. And we do have a collaborative relationship with Three Robins, so we do let them know about the activities that are going on in the library, and we've seen their residents come down for specific activities. I know the town put on a transportation seminar a couple months ago at our library, and we were surprised by how full it was with seniors from Three Robins. So I think they are interested in what we're doing, and
Great.
I echo what Brenda said about not necessarily knowing the before and after.
Okay, follow up to that, Mr. Mayor. I know when there was a period of time years ago, a few years ago, when I sat on the library board, and the library set about trying to teach seniors how to manage online activities such as Facebook and other things, which enabled a number of the residents in all the seniors' facilities connected with Meridian Foundation to actually connect with family in their homelands, Germany and other places, England. There was such a buzz that went about the senior community over how excited these seniors were that they would get to see pictures they probably would never see if it was paper pictures. But online, they could actually make connection. And they were quite excited about that. And I'm wondering about your amount of seniors using the facility. Are you finding that they're still coming in for assistance in how to get on an iPad or how to make these connections and get help in being safe while they're online? Is that still happening? And if so, I would guess that possibly some of those are a new group of seniors who were not part of the original senior population that accessed this. So could you speak to that just briefly?
For sure, yes. I always like to think that seniors are a really diverse group themselves, right? We have a large age range in that age group. So one service that is really popular amongst seniors and folks of all different ages is we have 3 staff members who do one-on-one technology help by appointment. So those are very solidly booked up. They're booking 2 to 3 weeks out for these appointments. And the topics range from, I think I have a virus on my computer, to how do I set up an email address. So that has been a really valuable service to the community. We are doing lots of outreach at the various long-term care facilities around Stony Plain. As I mentioned in our June report to you, that work has continued. And with increasing demand, we've been asked for more and more time to come out, especially with our happiness program. And it's been difficult to fulfill the desire for those facilities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hansard. Councilor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, ladies, for coming in. And thank you to the additional 2 board members sitting at the back for coming as well. It's always nice to see the support that this current board has from everybody within the community. So I greatly appreciate that. So I seen a bit of a puzzled look from some of my colleagues here on council when you were answering some of the questions relating to a deficit. So I'm going to do my best to explain it, and if I'm a little bit off track, you can bring me back, Lena. So the $14,000 deficit budget for 2024 relates to the budget for 2024. Had we been fully staffed, we would have been $14,000 in deficit. However, because we were not able to fill all the staff, we then have a bit of a surplus, which offsets that deficit. Now, talking about 2025 budget by the 2024 deficit, knowing what we know today going into 2025, if we left the budget currently the way it was set for 2024, we would have an additional $14,000. So we're anticipating being able to fill all of our full-time positions and part-time positions within the library system. So that's where that $14,000 comes into play. Is that clear now for those on council? It's a staffing-related issue, and not having them all. So my question for you, when I look at, it was mentioned that you were going to open 3 additional hours, but you have a $22,000 ask. Can you speak to the 141 hours that we're going to be able to add to the library's use for the request of the people within the community? And I've also heard council ask you many, many times sitting up here, how soon before we can add more hours? So if you could speak to that a little bit, please.
In terms of how soon can we have more hours, that might be one of our gifts to Stony Plain next year, right? No, we would make that be able to make that happen next year, for sure. How that position would contribute to those 3 hours, is that the root of the question? So it's a shift, like our library operates on shift work, right? So not everybody's on desk 100% of the time. There's work that needs to happen in the back, and there's administrative work as well, plus outreach work. We're often asked to be at events or visiting facilities, schools, long-term care facilities. So this position would help cover that 3 additional hours, and then would have also time to work particularly on outreach events and help us commit to more of those within the town's events and various departments that are looking to partner with us on different activities.
Thank you, and if I could. So one of the initiatives at the library that I think has become very evident over the last little while is traditionally we use students from 8 different schools in the summertime. And what we've used this summer was youth within our community who have then also been able to be employed after. So part of this would be able to be local youth being sponsored within our community and being not just summer, but they would be able to have part-time jobs within on the weekends and stuff like that as well. So thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you. And I appreciate just that clarity on the $14,000 deficit budget for 2024. Like in the future, be like $14,000 to be fully funded in 2025 would be a little bit easier to understand. Councillor Laurie, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for the presentation this evening. I just have one question in relation to page 58 and 57 for the extra hours. So on page 57, it talks about the $22,000 in staff cost to open an extra 141 hours in 2025 and increase the presence in the community. When I do 3 hours times 52 weeks, it's 156 hours, so leaving 15 hours short, or the equivalent of 5 weeks of not being open that extra 3 hours on the Saturday. I'm just wondering if you can let me know kind of where does that fall? Are there certain weekends that you wouldn't be open the extra hours, or where's that variance come in?
We may not be able to start this like as of January. So we're going to roll this program out as soon as we can, but it may be going we're going to go fine-free as our gift to the residents in January, and then that may be our announcement in February or in March about the expansion of the hours.
Okay, and then further question on that. When you look at this, you're looking at an additional 3 hours on the Saturday. Has there been any consideration given the value of the additional ask to implementing that in stages? And so potentially bringing it in like 1 hour in 2025, 1 hour in 2026, 1 hour in 2027? Or is this something that because of the way that it would work with staffing, et cetera, that you feel has to be a 3 hour minimum?
We could look into that option. The 3 hour minimum does then make it a full work day for our staff, and it makes it easier for us to schedule, because as it is currently, you know, we have different FTEs of staff, but that Saturday is a bit of a split day, so they have to make those hours up somewhere else at a different time in the week, and so they're working a short day and a short day, right? So I think it would be fairly easy to implement the 3 hours right away, and our staff would appreciate having, you know, coming in for that full work day.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And then lastly, the question I have is in regards to patron attendance and tracking. I don't know whether you have any technology set up, like on the doorways or anything like that, that does counters or anything. I didn't see any of that in this report. Do we have any of that type of data that shows the statistical trends of what the actual usage of the library is on the different days of the week, and whether, you know, the trends on Saturday are showing that, you know, Saturday would be the appropriate day to add additional hours, or would it be more appropriate to be open an hour later in the week, or open Sundays at some point? Just wondering if there's any of that kind of data that this decision's based on.
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have a patron counter at the front door. Unfortunately, it doesn't break it down by day of the week. I also had that same question myself when thinking about this. What we have seen is we can kind of go a little bit by computer use. So our computers are in full use on Saturdays. From the time we start to the time we close, every single computer in the building is in use. And we can also look at checkouts and transactions, although those are, you know, people are often picking up their books and leaving. To me, computer use is a really good indication of how many people are in the building and staying and wanting to be there and complete some work inside the library. And because of our shortened hours, someone can get on one of those computers and stay for almost half of our opening hours, and then it's not open to another patron because of the short opening hours.
Thank you. And then actually, that did bring one last one, if I may, Your Worship. Again, and I'm on your website looking at your current hours, and right now you're open for from 11 to 4 on Saturdays. And I'm thinking in my head, we also have Sundays where the library is completely closed. Looking at the ask of $22,000 for an additional 3 hours, it would put it in and around the range of, you know, maybe $35,000 if we were to go for 5 additional hours. Would that be reasonable to think that, you know, we could look at that opportunity to say, well, you know, maybe we'd like to see the library open 7 days a week rather than adding additional hours to one of the opening days? Is that an approximate budget consideration? I mean, obviously, it's not something we'd be able to direct or ask, but I'm just kind of snowballing some ideas around here in my head, trying to get a gauge and an understanding on that.
For sure, I appreciate the snowball or spitballing of ideas, right? I think the difficulty with Sunday is that would add an additional day to our janitorial contract. Currently, the library is cleaned every day, and I would recommend that we keep cleaning it every day just because of the type of use it gets. So that additional day of opening, the board did talk about this, and we did have a very robust discussion about the additional costs beyond staffing to remain open for another day, and janitorial is a huge piece of it. So we could look into that. It might increase our costs some more for the next year.
And I might just add, when we did our community engagement survey, there were patrons that wanted us to be open till 9 o'clock every night. There were patrons that wanted us to be open on Sundays for sure. There were some that said 24/7 even on there. But overwhelmingly, it was Saturday hours that received the most responses.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been so used to saying deputy mayor, it sounds like an incomplete sentence. Thanks. First, I'd like to say I see a little confusion. It seems a bit of the similar issue when I was on in regards to deficit 1 year in budget. I think Councillor Plechko did a much better job explaining it to us this go around, so thank you. But in that regard, and we are kind of talking about these additional hours, and I just pointed out previous staffing challenges that seem to be, so I'm just kind of curious, you say you are anticipating. What makes you confident that you will be able to fill all the positions this year, and how do you plan on going about doing that?
So just to clarify, what makes me confident in filling the positions or in that anticipating a surplus?
Well, you said you were anticipating being fully staffed, and like I say, I know there's been some challenges over the years. It seems sort of, so I'm just curious if you're confident that you will be fully staffed, and if so, how you plan to go about doing that?
I think it's prudent of us to anticipate being fully staffed because staffing is our largest expense. And it's important for us to be able to make payroll and pay the people we have. So I do estimate high on that just because I don't want to come up short on staffing, for sure. How I feel confident in attracting staff to our library. I've been very involved with the LIT program at MacEwan University, so we hosted a practicum student this fall who's actually covering a temporary position right now for us. We will be hosting practicum students for the next 4 years, as I signed a 5-year agreement with them. I take opportunities to present at conferences. I'll be presenting at the Stronger Together conference on October 4th and 5th. I think that's a good way to get the word of Stony Plain out to the library community and attract great applicants for our positions. I also take opportunities to mentor students through the University of Alberta. They have chances where working librarians can meet for coffee with students, and I always take them up on that because I really strongly believe in mentorship in my field. And any other opportunities that come up through the Greater Edmonton Library Association, I jump on those. I think we've also done a great job, as I mentioned, of hiring youth in our library who've come back, who've actually pursued library careers. We had a young person who came back 3 weeks ago. She actually just cold called Stony Plain and asked if she could use us for her SATE program project. And she came and hosted a program for us. And she had been a student library assistant many years ago. So it's really satisfying to see the impact this library has had on people's futures and careers and seeing them coming back and even applying for positions when they're adults.
Good, rope her in, don't let her leave.
And I might just also add that's partly why we're hiring Dr. Law again to do a compensation review. We want to make sure that when people apply it to our library that they feel confident that they'll be able to at least get a living wage or a competitive wage and not have to turn down the Stony Plain Library, as wonderful as it is, to go work somewhere else because they can make a far better wage. So we're going to take a good hard look at our compensation policies.
Well, thank you for the answer. It sounds like it's definitely a focus there. Just another one, if I... And maybe a bit of an easier question. I know from my time on the library board, there was one of the partnerships was with Parkland School Division and the Healing Garden. I know that was always a bit of a challenge there. I'm curious if that's still on the list, or I noticed you said reestablishing. So in the back of my head, I'm thinking that's it. But if you could speak to that.
Sure, yeah, thank you. We did have staff and programming at the Healing Garden this summer. We have one more year on that memorandum of understanding with Parkland School Division, after which it will be kind of up for negotiation. But we did hire a summer student with the intent of that person assisting our programmer in watering the garden. We had a few absences over the summer, so it ended up for a period of time, I was watering the garden, Bonnie was watering the garden, our bookkeeper was watering the garden, so it has really been a team effort. Unfortunately, the programming we had planned at the Healing Garden this summer just happened to be during that extreme heat wave, and we had to cancel it because we could not have people out in the sun at that time. But we're looking at next year how we can incorporate that space into our programming, maybe in the morning when things are a little bit cooler and we can be there to water and also have a story time or something there. I also would like to mention that the Friends generously sponsored Philip Campio to come out this summer and do some teaching at the garden and also in the library about the garden. So that program was well attended, and we had lots of interested people of all ages come to hear Philip speak about his traditional teachings.
Well, that's all very great to hear. I'm glad it's getting good use.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Any other questions for clear understanding? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for being here this evening. Very encouraged to see what's been going on with the library over the last little while. And you spoke to many of the things that I had sort of noted, but, presence at community events has been huge. I know I've seen staff and some of yourselves at different youth events in the community, the partnerships with our Indigenous friends. I know there's been conversations with Skydancer. You had the Filipino-Canadian Association down there, the conversations about youth employment. Interested interestingly enough, you had talked about some of the resume support, and I kind of had written down Trikala and Braden and sort of jumped on that and mentioned that those partnerships are there. And so really great to see, despite a digital revolution that has kind of swept through our world, libraries continue to be core community spaces. And there's been this shift in sort of what that program looks like. It's not just the, checking in and out of books anymore, but core supports, as you alluded to with the friend that has now landed a position working and been able to find meaningful employment in part to the work that you were able to do with him and the support that you were able to offer. And so absolutely tremendous things happening, and we're very grateful for that. Going through the presentation this evening, one of the things that I loved is you actually did half of my job for me. We'll often look at these and, we want to see how it fits into council's strategic plan and where sort of those connection points are in terms of what you're offering as a community resource and how that fits with the direction that we have for the municipality. And you very articulately, I don't know if that's a word, laid it out for us in terms of, helping us make some of those connections. And one of the ones that sort of stuck out for me, and it fits under the sense of community belonging and inclusion, but that's specific to our youth. And that was something that council very intentionally included in our strategic plan this year. And so much of what you have spoken to speaks to youth engagement and support for youth in our community, that presence in the community that's been suggested if there's some additional funding that's able to be in place to continue those meaningful connections has tremendous value. And I had the privilege of actually witnessing some of the library staff interacting with the youth and really seeing those relationships take shape, which really is a foundation. And so, thank you for all that you're doing in our community. We're excited to see what 80 years holds. I don't have a question for you this evening, but just wanted to share the gratitude and appreciation for the work that's been done. And certainly I know council would echo that, and we look forward to considering the budget request when we move forward here into our corporate planning. So thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Any other questions for clear understanding? Okay. Seeing none, I have a question that has not been raised. Let me see. Okay, on page 57 of the 2025 funding request breakdown, definitely applaud the library in terms of being fine-free for the 80th anniversary. Well, no, yeah, the 80th anniversary. But there's no line item that covers that cost. So is the library eating the fine revenue under a different line item?
I do have details on our fine revenue for 2023 and 2024 if council is interested in hearing that. So as Don mentioned, we've been seeing our fine revenue drop. So it dropped about, we're still only partway through this year, but it's on track to drop by about $10,000 this year. So how we've been able to work around that is I have cut the budget in some other areas. So our collections budget, for example, I trimmed that down significantly thanks to the allotment we received from Yellowhead Regional Library. And also, we've also trimmed a significant contract with our auto sortation machines. So I managed to get us a reduced fee on a maintenance contract for the machine that's in the back, where you check in the books. So that loss of revenue will be offset by some of these areas where I've been able to save or move money out of, hoping to recoup some of that in the future with our collections budget for sure. But we're still in a position where we're doing a lot of work administratively, and for me with collections, it was easy to say we're going to limit spending in that area as we're working through a strong plan to make sure we know what we're buying and why we're buying it, and not just putting money there for the sake of putting money there, but really having a plan for it. So that's Bonnie's department. She's getting her feet under her this year, and we're working on a collections plan for next year. But until we have that plan, I don't want to put a lot of money into it. I can move it into other areas, such as the late fees.
Okay, Okay, thank you for that. And then another question is, in terms of the funding request, it's a 17% increase from last year for Town of Stony Plain. I know there's other funding partners that participate in funding the Stony Plain Public Library. So is that the same percentage increase be requested at Parkland County, Spring Lake, and the provincial government operating grant?
With the provincial government, our opportunity to advocate for that is during election years. And I know Yellowhead Regional Library has been a strong partner in that, and was responsible, that region and many other regions were responsible for getting us an increase last year to that grant. So that is much appreciated. In terms of Spring Lake and Parkland County, Spring Lake has a pretty small revenue base, and they give equally to the different communities that they see their residents attending. Parkland County, I reached out and asked if their board would like a presentation. They were not interested in that, and they have a means of calculating what they give us. Stony Plain does receive the largest amount of money out of all the tri-region partners that participate in getting money from, out of all the regional partners, I shouldn't say tri-region. Devon's part of that. Seba Beach is part of that. We receive the largest amount from Parkland County.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. And not too sure if this is not quite part of your presentation, but it is part of our agenda, and that is the Stony Plain Public Library Board minutes from June 19th of 2024. So maybe questions will go to the council representative, and then maybe flow through to the presenters that may want to answer that. So I noticed on page 81, there is a motion of allocation of 2023 surplus of $41,000. $40,000 went to transfer to capital reserve, and then the other 1,100 and change went to professional reserve. So in terms of budgeting, what was the rationale of not to use some of that surplus from 2023 to support and reduce the ask for 2025, knowing that there'd be a surplus in 2024?
Okay, as part of the organizational review that Margaret Law performed with our board, one of the things that we were strongly advised that we should be doing was setting up reserve funds. So that is part of what we're starting to do. Our view is that it is good financial housekeeping to have some reserves set aside so that, for example, we're able to take that $28,000 of the capital reserve and use that towards the computer upgrades that we need to do. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And it goes into my next question regarding saying that I think many of us sit on boards and commissions and different town-appointed committees. We always talk about what is an adequate amount to hold in reserves, because it's all tax dollars. So has the board talked about what is that size of that reserve? Is it 100,000, or is it 200,000? Is it $500,000? Is there an idea of where we want to put a stop to that so that there's security there?
Okay, so we have set aside and we have set up a policy or policies that have set up limits for our reserves. Operational reserve is $100,000, or pardon me, 6 months. Sorry, $450,000. We have currently $100,000 in our operational, and that covers salaries, day-to-day operating costs. Our capital reserve, we have set at $100,000 limit, and our professional reserve at $10,000.
Okay, and what's the amount in the capital and professional?
Pardon me?
What is the existing amount right now?
We have $10,000 in the professional reserve right now.
Okay, and that's the cap is 10,000?
Yes.
Okay, and what about capital?
Capital, we have $61,747.
Okay, and your cap is 100,000?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I appreciate that. That gives me a lot of clarity. Go ahead.
So if I can just add to that, maybe talk about what you're using part of that capital for this coming year on the shelving and that.
For sure. So thank you, Councillor Palechko. So our capital reserve is set up for us to address expenses related to technology, furniture, and fixtures. And this upcoming year, we will be using some of that in response to our risk assessment. So our risk assessment identified some areas where furniture needs to be changed or altered for staff and patron safety. So that will be part of that expense. And then also the evergreening of technology. We have a lot of technology in the library, including our computers, our meeting room, and those things need to be changed out periodically. And we have been informed by Yellowhead Regional Library that as of October next year, they won't be, Microsoft won't be supporting Windows 10 anymore. We have several machines that cannot be upgraded to Windows 11 because of the age of the machine. So it's kind of coming at a one lump sum all at once that we have to do that replacement. So we're also thinking about the town's goal of adding citizens and residents to Stony Plain, and I know you have a goal of reaching 30,000 in the next 10 years or so. So we've been thinking about what sort of infrastructure will be required in the library to serve all those folks. And so our capital budget, for example, we've been really looking at if we had to add more computers and more computer infrastructure so that people could use computers in a timely fashion, how much would that cost in terms of putting in new cabling and things like that for the future?
Yeah, and thank you for that. That provides a lot of clarity for members of council when we definitely go into corporate plan and discuss the request, and that allows us to have an idea of what the caps are, what is planned for the future of the Stony Plain Public Library. And it's not just there because we don't know what to do with it. So thank you for that. Okay, any more questions? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And since you opened up those meeting minutes, I had a question in there as well, and it's, I think, quite an easy one, page 81. The library will be working with Val Hoagland with her SPYN program. So just looking for what SPYN stands for.
Sure, that is the Stony Plain Youth Network. So Val has been, I believe she's presented to council or at least spoken to the mayor about this. She's been looking at ways from her experience as a former law enforcement officer, how to engage youth and set them up with good volunteer opportunities and work opportunities to build their capacity, to help them become employable and to keep them engaged and away from mischief. So she's been a great partner. She has a strong background in restorative justice, which is a great interest of mine in terms of working with youth. So that's how we initially connected, is around ways to get youth back into the library after incidents have occurred.
Perfect, and I appreciate that, and I think all of us on council have heard some form of, something going on at the library, and certainly that opportunity to re-engage youth, and I think is really important. And so I appreciate the additional information and clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize to members of council for taking us off course, but I think it was timely to ask those questions in terms of the financial contributions that the town will be requested to make. Members of council, any other questions for clarity and understanding? Thank you very much, ladies. I must say you look beautiful and ravishing for 80 years old. So, but congratulations on your 80th anniversary in 2025. Definitely through the slides and the pictures, you can see the growth of Stony Plain Library and within the town as well. It's always been there to support our residents, to make sure that there is no economic barriers for residents to educate themselves, to get connected to the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members of council, that ends our presentations and delegations. I think we can kind of move through the next couple ones quickly before we take a recess. So number 5, there's no statutory public hearings, so that we'll move past that to number 6, which is the regular council meetings of September 9th. Members of council, you had the opportunity to read them. Any errors, omissions? Councilor Plechko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council approved the September 9th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to number 7 is council boards and committee minutes. We're looking at, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's the Tri-Municipal Facility Corporate Board for April 18th, May 16th, June 20th, the Cultural Roundtable for June 19th, and the Stony Public Library from June 19th. So any questions on all of them? Councillor Hansard?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to put a question through to the council rep on the TLC board. If we could just have a quick explanation for understanding, why are we seeing minutes in October from April, May, and June? June makes sense to me, but was there a delay or something in putting those minutes forward for us?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yep, thank you, Worship. Nope, I am not aware of any issues as to why it wouldn't. If you follow the minutes, you can see that they were approved at the next board meeting. So I would just believe it would be the administrative's submission to the town to be included in the package and the timeliness of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding those boards and committee minutes? See none. Councillor Hansard for the motion, please.
Your Worship, I move that council receive the council board and committee minutes for information.
Okay. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay. And that's carried. That brings us to number 8, which is bylaws. And we have 3 tonight. But before we get and dive into them, let's take a 15-minute recess. Thank you. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, members of council, our admin team, and those that are watching and follow along on YouTube Live. We're moving back to our agenda, which is number 8, bylaws. We have 3 tonight. They're all first reading, so the first one's 8.1. We're looking at the Brickyard at Old Town South Area Structure Plan. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to all of council. I'd like to introduce Michael. He's our current planner. He's been with the town for the last 3 months, so he's quite new. And he's here to present on all 3 of the bylaws coming before you. So I'll give it over to Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to council chambers, Michael. Go ahead.
Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Your Worship and council. Administration is presenting today first reading of bylaw 2696, which is to adopt an updated Brickyard at Old Town Area Structure Plan. In terms of the land use framework, this application falls within the neighborhood design level of the framework, which sets land uses, densities, servicing, and staging, which is what an area structure plan does. The overall concept of the area structure plan accommodates development of the rest of the Brickyard neighborhood, as well as supporting the development of Old Town South. So the next couple of slides will be comparing the existing land use or existing area structure plan on the left side of your screen, and then the proposed area structure plan on the right side. So the first map here is the proposed land use concept. In general, it shows low and medium density residential throughout the area, with medium density residential being concentrated along or near Brickyard Drive, which is a collector road. You'll notice that the high density residential shown in orange on the existing one has been removed and been replaced with other low density and medium density residential. However, despite the change, the overall density residential density has remained approximately the same of 26 units per hectare. Another major change you'll notice is the stormwater management facilities. So the central stormwater management facility, which was an interim storm pond facility, is being proposed as a permanent storm pond facility. This facility would service both the Brickyard area as well as areas to the east. So that would include Westview School and the future Recreation Center. There's also a storm pond to the south of that, which would service the Brickyard neighborhood. And both these together would replace the storm pond facilities shown on the northwest of the existing land use concept. That area would then be replaced with park and open space. In addition to park and open space, there are also 2 smaller park open space areas on the south portion of the Brickyard neighborhood area structure plan area, one of which is beside the stormwater facility and the other one servicing those residences within the south portion. The overall road network has remained virtually the same. Brickyard Drive is still a collector road extending to the west to the Aspen Meadows area. And there would also be a minor collector road going southbound towards the Deerfield ASP area, with the alignment changing slightly. The pedestrian concept has remained similar as well, with difference in alignment due to the stormwater facilities and the changing of the road network. Overall, there would be proposed connections to the park areas and the stormwater management facilities. The stormwater management plan, as mentioned, has been one of the more prominent changes with this proposed ASP. Again, the central stormwater management facility would service the Brickyard area as well as those east of the Brickyard area, again, servicing the future Community Recreation Center and Westview School, whereas the south stormwater management pond would service portions of the central and the south portion of the ASP area. The sanitary plan would remain relatively the same, with slight changes due to the alignments of the stormwater facilities and the road, and similar with the water distribution plan staying relatively the same, with slight shifting due to the layout. In terms of staging, the right map or the right side, the map on the right side of your screen shows the proposed staging, with areas on the east being proposed first, moving southwards, and then moving up back to the north there. If council moves forward with first reading, the administration would advertise for public hearing. In accordance with the public advertisement bylaw, administration would move forward with the category 2 advanced, which includes a mail out to landowners within 90 meters of the subject site, a notice sign being placed on the subject site, and displaying the information on the town website. Public hearing would be tentative for October 28th, 2024, with second and third reading to be intended on the same day. Thank you, and we'd welcome any questions. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Members of council, questions for clarity and understanding for first reading. Councillor Loynes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. In our agenda package, page 116, or even in the presentation on 190, there's a chunk of property along 53rd Ave that is considered a non-participating landowner. Can I just get clarification as to why they are a non-participating landowner?
Through your worship to Councillor Loynes, these two lots have been part of the Brickyard Area Structure Plan. Previous to that, it was under the Lakeview Area Structure Plan. These two areas represent areas in which land that was to the west of Old Town that was not developed, but needed to kind of be incorporated in the rest of that development area. So if you can notice the orange area sort of, if you can just go back to it. Thank you. It's the cross-shaded area, kind of on the north side, a little bit to the east. It's kind of indicated there with the cursor. The cross-hatched area there. In essence, the road plan that you can see better on the left plan, but again would be included and proposed on the right plan as well. That there, I guess, forms a total loop through it. Now, in essence, what we're doing here is amending and consolidating the original plan, so we're not trying to change any of the planning for this area. That planning for low density, basically to kind of finish off those two dead ends through a loop, is still intended. So there's no change here for the statutory plan requirements for this landowner. And again, this landowner was engaged, I believe, in the first plan that was done up. But at this point in time has not been re-engaged. So I think that's what's really being noted here by the developer when they had done up these maps.
And then my next question is on page 118 of our package, and it's talking about the medium density changes. Are any of those lots that we have now as a medium density, the 0 lot lines that we pre-approved?
The worship of Councillor Loynes, all of the lands that are shown as orange on the map, including those that are stage 5, which I believe is the area that you're indicating, yes, those are already zoned either R4 or R5, which are medium density districts.
But are any of them included in the 0 lot line pre-approved that we gave for the pilot project?
Your worship, no. The pilots are in South Creek and West Terra, so there's none within the Brickyard area.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for administration for clarity? Okay, Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation this evening. I have two questions, and one I think may or may not be appropriate. So if it's the wrong time, please just let me know. Just looking at page 124, which is the staging map. This is a question that maybe need to be reserved for another time, but we're already hearing a number of different conversations from residents about the traffic sort of through this area, Brickyard Drive, Westview School, with the anticipation of the rec center just to the north there, with work being undertaken this fall, and then phase 1 being along that same roadway. Just lots of residents wondering how that build out is going to be managed so that traffic can still continue to flow through that area. Now, I understand that we're just looking at the zoning of this right now, but just wondering about timing for the developer in terms of the build-out of the first phase here and how that may or may not impact traffic with the development on the other side of the road.
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson. Right now, neither 50th Avenue, which is the collector road into the north side of Brickyard, nor 57th Avenue are at capacity or kind of even close to capacity in terms of their ability to handle traffic right now. So in the near future, there's no real concern. Again, there was a little bit of concern prior to opening up 57th Avenue and the Westview School and that part of the Brickyard Drive to create the loop that now exists there. Ultimately, the intention is that north of where the roundabout is on the north side, so where Brickyard Drive and 50th Avenue connect, that road would be extended, Brickyard Drive would be extended northward to a future extension of 49th Avenue. So if people are familiar with 49th Avenue right now, where it tees into Main Street, that would be continued west, kind of just to the south side of the railway tracks. And ultimately, when that gets through, there's going to be a lot of additional capacity there created. You can kind of indicate there would be another minor collector road kind of further west of Brickyard Drive that would likely connect in there also from 49th Avenue to produce additional connectivity. And again, ultimately from I guess an ultimate standpoint, Brickyard Drive would continue west. You've got the minor collector road that would go south, kind of down towards 79th Avenue or the extension of Highway 628 that would provide more comprehensive as this area builds out.
Certainly, and I appreciate that, and I think hearing the plan, I think when we look at that, there's obviously concerns about that much development in such a small area, but was confident that that had been thought through, and I appreciate the details on that. My second question, just page 102, I believe, and this is just a point of clarity for my own understanding. This is parks and open spaces. Thank you in the presentation, great job explaining where these are going to go. There is a paragraph. Make sure I get my right spot here. My apologies, just had to switch pages. Looking at the end of 4th paragraph and 5th paragraph, amenities for this site may include, which is great to see some forethought there. My wonder, and this is just my lack of understanding, I think, on the development side, when those areas are built out, is that a municipal project or is that a developer project that they will undertake as a part of the neighborhood design?
Through your worship, Councillor Anderson, I'm going to say it's evolved over time, and it's often done as a partnership. So over the time that I've been with the town for the 12 years, originally it was just putting up some soccer goalposts, say in South Creek, that was a developer obligation. Since then, many of our playgrounds have become kind of standard practice for the developer to include. Some things have been more joint, such as the Westera Rink. I know there's a partnership between putting the surface, putting the boards, various aspects of the rest of the site there was kind of a joint endeavor. So again, there's kind of some bare minimum, I would say, that we would require a developer to definitely put in there and some partnership opportunities there to enhance it.
Okay, thank you for that. And just if I can carry that just a little bit further, but you know, in some of those larger spaces, Westera is an example, wasn't with council when that happened, but does that come forward as a capital ask through the corporate plan? Is there something there just through, you know, our developer levies and otherwise that sort of collect and fund some of those projects? How might we see the ask for the cost of those projects come forward to the municipality?
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson, in particular with the Westera one, there was some additional money set aside for capital rec. This is before we had the rec facility and some of those larger, I guess, aspects. So I guess right now it would probably have to come from capital or an operating budget depending on what was available. But again, these are things that are kind of smaller in scale and may be addressed on kind of a site-by-site basis.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that it's, you know, small fish in a big pond, so to speak, but certainly adds to the quality of life for the residents that live in that area, and certainly something that we valued as a council in terms of our active recreation spaces and having active transportation networks through our community, and so I appreciate seeing that come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Meyer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to administration. Just a quick couple of questions. So I noticed, through you to administration, I noticed a slight increase to our dwelling units per net hectare from the previous area structure plan. I'm just curious if that reflects like a loss of municipal reserve, or if you could just speak to the compensation of the change there.
Your Worship, Councillor Meyer, if I understand correctly, the change does not necessarily affect the park space, if that's where you're going with the municipal reserve.
Yeah.
So in essence, it wouldn't necessarily change the municipal reserve. Typically, or required under the provincial legislation of the MGA, 10% of the overall land is dedicated as park space or municipal reserve. Again, so an increase in density slightly or decrease or anything to that effect wouldn't necessarily change that land area that is just based upon that percentage of the gross area itself.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. And then just through you again to administration, almost embarrassed to ask the question, but if you could just remind and refresh my memory, in regards to the temporary storm pond, that it's going to be turned into a permanent storm pond. Besides us amending the bylaw, I'm trying to remember, we didn't make any contribution to the storm pond, did we?
Through your worship to Councillor Myers, no, it was done by the developer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meyer. Councillor Hansard. Okay, then we'll go to Councillor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Worship. So I'm just looking for a little bit of clarity, and correct me if my mind has gone back too far somewhere along the way, but originally we had a similar setup when this development originally came to us. And then we moved to have larger stormwater ponds to accommodate the flow that would be created by the development, and part of that development would have been our rec center. Why are we going back to having smaller ponds directly behind houses in the center of almost a housing development with a trail that kind of goes to nowhere as well? Just help me to understand why we've gone to 3 ponds when we had that kind of originally, and then we moved to the 2 ponds to accommodate the extra runoff, and now we're able to go back to this. Is this a request of the town, or is this a request of a developer, and why?
Through your worship to Councillor Pletchko. There's a few different answers or a few different responses or reasons, I think, which led to this. I think ultimately, when the Brickyard developers were looking at their area, they didn't necessarily account for all of the area that is within Heritage Estates and part of Old Town South that did flow through there. So the size of the original area structure plan did not necessarily include all of that area. It was only once we got to the detailed design for stage 5 that they started to consider all of that impact that flowed through there. With the development of the school site, if you're familiar, along Brickyard Drive north of Westview School, there's a large holding pond or swale sort of thing there. So the town created that as a temporary means to accommodate the storm pond, or the storm pond retention or stormwater runoff from the school facility, because that needed to be retained somewhere. So ultimately, another facility like a rec facility would need additional capacity. So the intention here is by building the 2 larger ponds, it's a larger area overall and a larger capacity, that it would take the need from anywhere within, say, the town's lands to build this storm pond. So I think that's probably the fundamental one. When this took place and working with the developers, they looked at locating a large storm pond in the far northwest corner, some of the logistics in terms of the timing to do that. And I think when they looked at that, and once the interim storm pond has already been placed where it was, it made more sense to expand that one initially. And then again, to support further development to the south, right by the school, it made more sense to, again, have another pond closer there. Specifically in terms of housing and backing on, I would probably leave that to the public hearing when the developer's here to speak more on why they do specific designs to that effect. But I think that provides at least a basis for some of the rationale for some of the changes there that was asked.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any more questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question of clarity referring to page 192, and it's the Parks and Open Space designation, which we would typically know as MR, and then the proposed pedestrian connection concept, where it does show the proposed multi-use trails. In the previous plan, the proposed multi-use trails all essentially followed a strip of MR. So they were all contained within a strip of that park space. Where I'm looking particularly on the southern portion of the proposed pedestrian connection concept, I see multi-use trail proposed that I believe would be going through what will be future housing, future development, but there is no park or open space, no MR showing around that. So I'm just, is that then going to be multi-use adjacent to a roadway? Or is that, like, I guess with the MR designation now being changed, is it really up to the developer how they put that trail in?
Through your worship to Councillor Laurie, we worked with the developer over the last, basically the summer here, to put towards new plan. Ultimately, by removing the storm pond out of the northwest corner, that did create a slightly larger mass of MR. As indicated, the plan, it's kind of proposed as a large natural area. Maybe think something like Willow Park natural area perhaps would be an example of what that could turn into. By doing so, there was a substantial amount of linear trail or MR that was proposed towards linear trail that was removed from other portions of the map, including down on the south between the east-west corridor there. And you're correct in terms of the fact that any of that area, specifically the dot that goes east-west, kind of from the minor collector road over to the linear trail that is buffering Heritage Estates, that would just kind of go along a local road. Again, there's some opportunities perhaps in terms of if it would be a trail or a sidewalk, something we determine more at the design stage, but ultimately it's showing that there needs to be a kind of a trail connection there between that linear north-south trail along Heritage Estates to connect basically over to the minor collector where there would be a trail along that minor collector.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. See none, I'll ask the question on page 190. We'll just stick at that one. In terms of the realignment, I think it was mentioned here too. Looks like we're getting more MR than previously allocated in the old area structure plan. Is that somewhat?
Your Worship and Council, the existing plan right now does have some of it as potentially cash in lieu that would be maybe redivided or reallocated upon kind of site development. So you would see slightly larger amount, but it might be the thickness of a line in terms of what you're actually seeing for more MR in this case.
Okay. So if the developer does not match the 10% requirement, then it's cash in lieu.
Your Worship to Council, that would be correct. Again, typically we don't allow cash in lieu for residential areas, or it's a preference not to. But again, it was something that when the Brickyard Area Structure Plan was originally adopted, they didn't show 10% of the area explicitly towards that. So in the plan, it did denote that it could be cash in lieu if it wasn't reallocated upon detailed design for subsequent subdivisions.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll just add to the question that Councillor Meyer asked earlier regarding density. And also on the old plan, there is high density residential, but the new one does not. So is there a reason for high density residential being removed from the new application?
Through your worship to all of council, again, we're still trying to keep with the same density overall, acknowledging that current low and medium density are developed at a slightly higher density than they were, say, 10 or 12 years ago. When they put in the numbers to get the same density. They did not require the same amount, or any in this case, of the high density. So ultimately, we are developing it overall at the same density, just the low and the medium are done at a slightly higher density overall to achieve about the same numbers.
Okay. Thank you. And in terms of the north road going down, you mentioned that it was a local road you mentioned?
The dotted line coming south of Brickyard Drive is a minor collector road, and any of the roads that would be off of that would be a local.
Okay. In terms of that concept, knowing the activity and the development that will happen there, would it be more beneficial to make that a major collector road, as we'll have definitely the school in full swing, future recreational center that we built in terms of traffic, maybe another school or phase 2 of the recreational center, and maybe even phase 3 of the recreational center. So does it not make sense to now make sure that there's enough road right away there to increase that to a major collector road once that is fully developed?
Through your worship to all of council. Again, that could be considered perhaps at a later date. I guess what I'd say right now is that in order to make this amendments, we limited the number of, say, additional studies or additional work that needed to be done, given the fact that we're really just reallocating the existing density, space, population within this. No changes were looked at specifically from a transportation standpoint, given that there was an original TIA that supported the original at these densities. So could there be? Potentially, but it wasn't within the scope of what we had worked with the developer for this update.
Okay, thank you. And then also looking on page 190, looking at kind of the redesign, I think Councilor Anderson brought it up in terms of green space and amenities for the residents in that area. I know we will have the Westview School there, and also definitely a lot of recreational amenities there. But there is a little triangle of green space that's right off Brickyard Drive. And there's no square that's kind of south of where that collector road is. Would it make more sense in terms of going forward just to, that piece of property is very close to the school and to the future recreation center, but to amalgamate that with the square on the bottom section to have a larger amenity there, as you mentioned earlier, like maybe something, a partnership like that was done over at West Terra to get outdoor community rink, or something a little larger than just that.
Through your worship to all of council, again, that it would be an opportunity, perhaps a change could be proposed. I know working with the developer, their preference was to keep it as the two smaller areas. Again, administrative comments suggested something to that effect. Again, it might be something, again, for the developer to explain more at the public hearing if granted by council tonight.
Okay, thank you. And definitely with our open spaces and parks master plan, just make sure that we're not just getting land because there's land available for us, but it's not functional for residents. So if that's something that we need to keep an eye on, so you equal the amount of MR that's supposed to be dedicated, but if it's not functional, then is it really functional MR? Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a question through you to administration, again referring to page 190. And we've had a couple of questions in regards to traffic and collector roads volume, et cetera. Obviously, this area structure plan only takes into account the developer's land. I just want to confirm through administration that currently with the Old Town South redevelopment plan and with the land swaps that will be happening with Parkland School Division, with the construction of Westview School and the demolition of Stony Plain Central, there is a potential for additional road networking to be completed through that area, which could provide additional connections coming in from the east towards the Recreation Center and Westview School. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Laurie, that would be possible through some of the detailed design work that could be done within Old Town South.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. See none. Councillor Anderson for the motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that Town Council give first reading to bylaw 2696/DNP/24, a bylaw to adopt a revised the Brickyard at Old Town Area Structure Plan, and authorize administration to proceed with public notification as per public advertisement bylaw 2681/G/23 for a public hearing to be held on October 28th, 2024 for bylaw 269/DNP/24.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Thank you, Administration, for the presentation. Definitely looking forward to the public hearing to hear what our residents have to say in terms of what is being proposed, and also then being able to ask the developers the questions that Council had. Hopefully that the developers have been deprived of those questions and that they're able to answer them right away, right off the bat, so we don't have to ask those questions again. Any debate on the motion to accept? Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, moving on to bylaws 8.2. This is the bylaw for Brickyard Stage 6. It's the land use bylaw amendment. And it's also first reading. Go ahead, Administration.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Administration is presenting first reading for bylaw 2697 to amend the land use bylaw for Brickyard Stage 6, which would facilitate the development in the Brickyard area. In terms of the land use planning framework in the town of Stony Plain, this would fall under the land development tier, as it includes an amendment to the land use bylaw. In terms of the area that we're talking about today, outlined in red on the map is the area where is the subject area of the application. Underlaid is the proposed area structure plan, which you guys just saw. In terms of the aerial context, if this gives a better view there, this area would be west of Brickyard Drive and west of Westview School and the future community recreation area, and south of the existing stormwater pond, and including where the interim stormwater pond is today. Specifically, this amendment would be amending the land use bylaw by redistricting future development districts to low and medium density residential areas, park areas, and open space, as well as utility areas to accommodate the stormwater management facilities. More specifically, the areas shown going to P3 would be those utility areas, which would be where the two stormwater management facilities for the Brickyard area would be. The majority of this site is low-density residential, shown as R2 district, the detached dwelling residential district. Medium-density residential would be in the forms of R4 mixed form residential and R5 small lot mixed form, which would be generally located along Brickyard Drive or nearby Brickyard Drive. As well as there's a portion going from FD to P1, the Parks District, just adjacent to the south stormwater pond area, which would be for parks and open space. If Council gives first reading to this bylaw, administration would move forward with public hearing tentatively for October 28th, 2024. Similar to the last one, this application would be advertised in accordance with the public advertisement bylaw under Category 2 Advanced, which includes placing a notice sign on the subject site, displaying the information on the town website, and giving a mail out to landowners within 90 meters of the subject area. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation on stage 6 of the Brickyard. Any questions for clarity and understanding before we take the motion? Okay, see none. I do have a question in terms of the design there that's coming through, which is stage 6. I know stage 6 has the two storm ponds that will be considered. Looking at the previous application in terms of rezoning, can the administration explain why that the pedestrian connectivity does not go all around the lake? It's just only on one side of both of the storm ponds? I think the best page to look at is page 192 on our. I asked that question because I've received a lot of communications and comments from members that live in South Creek, and they love the fact that the storm pond there has a loop that's around the lake, and people walk that all the time. So I'm just wondering, through the design here, it wasn't contemplated to have a pedestrian trail around the storm ponds.
Through your worship to all of council, the town doesn't necessarily require a trail to loop around each storm pond. It is somewhat up to the developer to indicate what they would prefer, what their preference is. Again, we do support trails, and our preference is generally to have some trails to kind of support active transportation, active modes of transit around stormwater ponds. So in the case of this, the developer has had a detailed design for all the lots and the layouts and has indicated that a trail would at least meander kind of on one side of each pond, but has not necessarily felt the need to have a full loop there. Again, this might be a better question for the developer specifically to speak to why, but it is something that I've seen even in my own neighborhood in Edmonton. Again, some storm ponds are completely looped, some are on one side. It kind of depends somewhat on the design of the pond as well.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? See none. Councillor Meyer, please.
Yes, the town council give first reading to bylaw 2697 LUO/24 to amend land use bylaw 2686/LUO/24 and to authorize administration to proceed with public notification as per Public Advertisement Bylaw 2681/G/23 for a public hearing to be held on October 28th, 2024 for Bylaw 2697 LUO/24.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Meyer. Thank you, administration, for bringing this forward. Looking forward to the conversation with the developer and our residents. Members of council, any debate on the motion? Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, moving on with our agenda is 8.3, which is another bylaw, and it's bylaw 2698 LUO/24 for 700 Genesis Drive. And that's also a bylaw amendment, first reading. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship and Town Council. This presentation is for first reading of bylaw 2698 to redistrict 700 Genesis Drive. In terms of the planning land use planning framework in the town of Stony Plain, this application would fall under the land development as it deals with an amendment to the land use bylaw. In terms of location, we're looking at 700 Genesis Drive within the Genesis on the Lakes neighborhood. This map here shows the existing Genesis on the Lakes area structure plan with the subject area circled in red. The Genesis on the Lakes area structure plan shows this property as future medium density residential. Just to give further context, on the map here is the aerial context map. 700 Genesis Drive is located again within the Genesis on the Lake neighborhood, north of Genesis Lake Boulevard and directly west of Genesis Lake Drive. The application today for first reading is to redistrict from the R4 Residential Mixed Form District to the R6 Comprehensively Planned Residential District. One of the main drivers for this application by the developer is that the R4 limits row house dwellings to 4-unit dwellings, whereas the R6 has no such limit. And based on the developer's application, changing to R6 would facilitate the developer's desire to have up to 6-unit row house dwellings. R6 is a medium density residential district, so it still aligns with the Genesis on the Lakes area structure plan. And R6 also gives the flexibility for the subdivision to face a front public road or, as is with most condominium lots, have a private road or have the lots face a private road instead. Also on this map, you'll see that the lot to the south, 800 Genesis Drive, is also R6 as well, so it aligns with that property to the south there. If council gives first reading on this application, administration would move with advertisement for a public hearing. In accordance with the public advertisement bylaw, we would advertise this in accordance with Category 1, the standard one, which includes a notice sign placed on the subject site and displaying information on the town website. This would fall under Category 1 as this application aligns with an approved council neighborhood plan. Then we would move forward with public hearing tentatively scheduled on October 28th, 2024. Thank you, and we're open to any questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again for bringing this one forward. I'm on page 240, and this is one of those ones, again, I'm going to feel silly for asking, but just looking for some help understanding sort of the drawing of the neighborhood here. Are we looking at, 240 in our package. It's, I don't know what page that would be for the presentation. Anyway, there's a little map there of how the houses are laid out and how the row houses are. We see some roads and those sorts of things, and then we see some thinner gray lines. Are those sidewalks to go into the homes, and then the lighter gray attached to the house would be some sort of a garage unit? Is that?
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson, I believe you're correct in all the indications or all of those matters. Yeah, the small thin lines I believe are indicated to be sidewalks. The light shaded areas are drive pads, driveways, that sort of thing. Again, this is just a sketch at this point. The applicant wanted to provide some information in terms of what they were looking for. Again, just kind of saying row housing from 4 to 6 doesn't necessarily depict quite as much as this drawing. I will emphasize again, this drawing here would be enabled and would be refined if council gives this area R6. But again, this is just one example of how it could look. So if you fall in love with this, it may not turn out exactly the same way. But yes, ultimately it's showing main drive aisles in the dark gray. The skinnier lines are the sidewalk connections, and then the lots or the dwellings themselves would be the white with the drive pads in light gray.
Sure. No, and I appreciate that. And I think where my question and concern was coming from is it's a lot of units in a smaller area with what looks like no on-street parking at all. And so it looks like everything would be sort of off-street parking based on the way that it's drawn out. And so it looks like you have something there.
If I could just add, through your worship to Councillor Anderson, again, all of the on-site parking would still be required. I don't remember the number offhand in the land use bylaw, but based on the number of dwellings, each dwelling would have a certain number of parking stalls assigned, including visitor, given the number of units here. So it'd be very similar. The only difference really between the R4 and the R6 is that this would be a public road with a cul-de-sac likely, with street-oriented product as opposed to something that's a comprehensively planned site.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for administration for clarity and understanding? Okay, I see none. Looking at page 232 of our package. So I'm looking at lot 800. So am I correct in reading that is already zone R6?
Your worship, all of council, yes, that is correct.
Okay. With that, and then I'll move back down to page 240 that was mentioned by Councillor Anderson. So in terms of the proposed layout, I know this might not be set in stone, but looking at that, it's going to be a nightmare if it's a public road for staff to clear the snow from. So what is our intent, to go up north of the little side roads?
Through your worship, to all of council, again, this road that's shown on here would probably be about 8 meters wide and would just fit what our private road standard is. If it was a public road, it would be wider for one part. And again, there's some engineering standards there that would have to be built. It would be public infrastructure as opposed to own as private infrastructure. So again, it would be more operational costs and ownership if this was done in the R4 as a fee simple style development as opposed to a comprehensively planned site.
Okay. So, and I also noticed that the one road dead ends into lot 800. So is this developer in the process of working with the owners of lot 800 to connect that and then reconnect to Genesis Boulevard?
Through your worship, all of council, the town has had pre-applications for both this lot and the one to the south, 800 Genesis. Again, there has been some conversation between the landowners of the potential to do that. In this case, you'd probably have a roundabout or some sort of a turnaround at the end of that area shown on the, call it the south or kind of the southeast there, where the visitor parking is shown. But there would be the potential that if this did get that R6, that it could be developed comprehensively between the two lots as well. So it's an option, depending if the landowners want to work together, and this one does successfully get an R6 from council.
Okay, thank you. And then on same page, then can administration use the laser and go to page 240 and tell me which ones are I guess after it's developed, which one would be a town-owned road?
Through your worship, we don't have, I guess we can share it here in a sec. I don't know if we specifically have it there, but all of the lots that are shown on there, all of the white areas are either a 6-plex or a 4-plex, and they're all done as row housing as indicated on this plan here.
Right, so I'm looking at the road where it is at right now. Definitely, there's infrastructure and roads for residents to get into those housing units. Which of those roads will be turned over to the town to maintain and to take care of?
Through your worship, of council, none of the roads would be handed over to the town that are shown on that site plan.
Okay, so this will be then a condo development?
Potentially, it could be done either as a rental ownership sort of style, or it could be done as a bare land condo. Again, that would be up to the landowner to determine if they wanted to create legal units that would be owned or just rented out on that property.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because I look at the design, it would be very difficult for our staff to go there and maintain that in terms of snow clearing and everything else. If this is going to be privately maintained and done, versus like very many of our other condo associations like Greywood Mews, Fairways, around Fairways, that's taken care of, that our staff are not going there and trying to maneuver, our large equipment through that.
Your worship, I'll just add a couple of comments to the manager of planning's explanation there. As you mentioned, this is intended to be a private road. If there was an indication that this could become a town-contributed asset from the developer, that when we get to the engineering phase, which we're currently in the planning phase, those discussions happen with our public works teams and their supervisors, and they give feedback to the developer on exactly those things, snow turnaround, maintenance, things of that nature. At this time, it's a planning phase. So as the manager of planning indicated, this is a plan that's likely to have some iterations over time, and these are comments that we take to heart when we're discussing with them. And we do consider any assets that are contributed to the town through developments in the ways that council has brought up tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hansard.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we get drawings, it always brings up questions that maybe we aren't even supposed to be discussing at this point, because we're really talking about land use here, are we not? Land use. I do have a question, though. Are the driveways on each one of these units large enough to accommodate extra cars? Are they deep enough to allow a car or a truck to park in them? And is it 1 or 2 wide? And are there really and truly only 7 visitor stalls in that whole complex?
Through your worship, to Councillor Hansard, you were correct in stating that this is probably a little bit too detailed of a design for council rezoning one property from an R4 to an R6. That said, I don't have the dimensions on here, so I can't really explicitly state the size or what vehicle would be accommodated by the parking stalls. I can note that I believe it's 1 in 10, so the number of units divided by 10, rounded up to the nearest whole number, would be the number of visiting parking stalls required. So again, I haven't counted them all out, but that would be the calculation that would be taking place.
Thank you for that answer. That helps me on that. However, I'm a little bit lost on the comment that these might be rental units or owned units. I don't see what difference it makes. If people are going to live there, They have to be able to accommodate vehicles. They have to be, the roads still have to be cleared. If the clearing of the roads is going to be done privately, that's great, until such time as the condo association is disbanded, and then voila, the town has it back in our lap. So then what? You've got all these buildings created, and I know this also is more detail than we're supposed to be getting into here, but maybe red flags go up for planning department. We don't have a municipal planning commission anymore. Council doesn't get to speak in to these situations anymore until we see them from you. But the issue for me is we need to make certain that we always have in the back of our mind, what if this association folds? There's right now 2 in town where people, they've been privately owned roads for a long time, but there's a discussion going on that maybe that will not continue. Then somebody's got to take it over. And so I think we need to be prepared. If we're going to allow something to be built, why can't we ask for it to be big enough that our equipment can get in there and get that road cleared? Because it may not always stay in the hands of a company that takes care of snow removing for a private owner, because they don't always stay private. And if there's not enough visitor parking there, we need to have more visitor parking, or the driveways need to be big enough that somebody can pull in their garage if there is a garage, or park on the driveway more than one vehicle. Otherwise, you've got a nightmare being created there. Thank you, that's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hansard. Again, that's just sharing some of the concerns and voices that we've heard in the community through other developments that are R6 or R7 or a little bit R8. Okay, members of council, I know this is just only for first reading, but we're also looking at rezoning that. So any more questions of clarity and understanding? Okay, Councillor Loyens, please.
Town Council give first reading to bylaw 2698/LUO/24 to amend the land use bylaw 2686/LUO/24 and authorize administration to proceed with public notification as per public administration bylaw 2681/G/23 for a public hearing to be held on October 28, 2024 for the bylaw 2698/LUO/24.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for clear understanding on the motion? It looks like October 28th might be a busy day. I think I feel the flu coming on. October 28th, I might be sick. All right, with no more questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on with our agenda to number 9, which is business items. The first one is 9.1, the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Center 2025 budget presentation. We received the presentation a little earlier from the general manager and the board chair. And I'll move to ask Deputy Mayor Laurie to make the motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll recommend the Town Council accept the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Center 2025 operating budget report for information.
Thank you. Members of council, we had the presentation. We asked some questions for clear understanding. Any debate on the motion to accept for information? Okay, see none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to 9.2, which is the Stony Plain Public Library 2025 funding presentation. I'll move over to Councillor Plechko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council accept the Stony Plain Public Library 2025 funding request presentation for information.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a great presentation and great conversation, and we asked a lot of good questions for clear understanding. Any questions, comments, and debate on the motion? Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question for administration. Just refresh my memory. I know this came up last year. Are these automatically added to our corporate plan and included when that's presented to council? Or is this something that during the corporate plan, council can move to be added into the corporate plan?
Thank you, Your Worship. These are, council would be making these as additions. They will be notified, they will be part of the corporate plan presentations. Council will see those numbers and the impacts and so on.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Good question. And I think that has been what our norm is for quite a few years, to make sure that it was a positive motion instead of a negative motion, but it was a positive increase as we had in the previous years when the requests were built into the budget. Okay. Any other questions and comments? See none, call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Right, moving on to number 10, which is council discussion. This is the time that members of council can update the rest of council and admin on issues that may be happening in the community or what's happening on the boards and commissions. We'll start with Councilor Loynes.
Nothing for me.
Councilor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few things, but just highlight the Pioneer Museum's Harvest Fest this weekend, along with all the other cultural events. It was almost too many things. You couldn't hit them all, although that's a good problem to have. Anyhow, so that was, I'd like to just give a shout out to those things. But also, while on my travels, I noticed, actually it's really fitting with the library stuff coming to the council this evening, because the old library sign is still there, and I think if we're celebrating 80 years, maybe we should be definitely directing people to the right library and where it's at. So administration, I'm sure you guys see it too, but we should probably move on that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Councilor Anderson.
Wasn't ready, actually. I thought you were going to start on the other side, but that's okay. One of the things I think I reflect on living in Stony Plain are the people that are our neighbors and friends. And as Councillor Meyer alluded to, we had so many different cultural events happening this last weekend, or events in general for Alberta Culture Days, and had the privilege to be a part of that, and just met so many amazing people that get so excited to be a part of a community that hosts these events and activities for themselves and their families. And so just want to extend my gratitude to our teams that are involved in hosting those events, or, and putting them on, advertising them, welcoming people there. But also to the residents that partake in those events. We often see conflict and divisiveness every time the TV turns on, and we are extremely lucky in Stony Plain to have the team that we do and the residents that we have, and so feeling rather grateful this evening. So.
Okay. Thank you for continuing your year of gratitude, and I definitely appreciate that. Year two. Councillor Hansard.
Your Worship, Saturday was a really good day for me because 3 of the bests happened on that day from my viewpoint. One of them, I will just give a shout out to everyone who helped to create Gather and Grow Day. That was year 14 of Arbor Day, and Arbor Day is near and dear to my heart. Tree hugger from my hippie days. Joan Baez guitar picking and long hair and crazy talk, although I never did drugs, and that's the truth. But to be able to carry that forward in my life and be able to be part of a council that approved Arbor Day 14 years ago, and then here we are in a park that honestly, I haven't given much in the way of second thoughts to. In all the years that I've lived here in Stony Plain, I've driven by that road, I do not know how many times. And I have never thought about the fact that needed some extra trees and growth. And there we were on Saturday at a Gather and Grow Day. And it was wonderful because we didn't have to walk down any long paths. Everybody knew where they were going. There was lots of parking around the entire park. that was a good crowd that came out. And then you had the McGinn family dedicating a tree to one of their family members who had passed away. It was a very emotional time for them. How special that was. I thought we should incorporate a dedication of a tree every time we do Gather and Grow Day, because there are many families who would like to commemorate their loved ones, not with a bench, not with, other means that are available, but how blessed we are to be able to plant trees and have that be a memory or done in dedication of somebody that we love. That made it special, but I thought, how many people are in this little park? And I drove by there yesterday and I thought, wow, the color, the tree choices, bright red trees, my goodness. And then when you sent us over to the one part of the area to have the dedication with the McGinn family, and I thought, is that a maple tree? It was actually red leaves on it. How tickled I was. Well, it's not a maple tree. I found out from Public Works representative that it was an Ohio Buckeye tree. Well, that was special for me because I was born in Ohio. And yes, I am a Buckeye, and yes, I cheer for the Ohio State everything sport for sure, because my mother did, and she was also born in Ohio. So I thought this is probably the best Arbor Day anywhere, but for sure in the town of Stony Plain. So thanks to everybody who made that happen, and to all our residents who came out and celebrated that. I heard from them, by the way, that it was the best in their opinion too. That everybody got a chance to plant a tree or have a significant part of planting a tree. And Councillor Pletchko was over there trying to get other people to help plant his tree. So I just thought that was really brave of him. His little grandsons threw dirt on trees better than any two little kids I ever saw. So it was just a wonderful day. So thank you so much for that. And honestly, we have so many things to be grateful for here in Stony Plain. We take time to recognize small things, but in doing so, they don't stay just small things. It is a way to connect people in our community, connect other communities to us, and I think it causes us to stand out brightly in the region. And we could not be doing this if we did not have such wonderful staff, all the way up to those who plan and allow people to plan and have some creativity. So thank you very much for that. And that's really, although there's many things I could talk about, I don't need to do that. Thanks for letting me have this time.
Thank you, Councillor Hansard. I appreciate the mention in the park. Yeah, sometimes people forget that there's a park there because if you drive through there during your driver's exam, you lose 10 points. That's right. Councillor Pletchko, please.
No, not from experience. I had my license before I come to town. I know everybody talks about specific events when we come to a round table, but I think what's really important is walking around this community this weekend. It truly takes a community to build the community, but without our staff, it's pretty tough to have all the events that we have. And they take a lot of time and give back to the community during the summertime when they could be giving back to their families. So kudos to each and every one of our staff that takes time to attend the events, walk downtown, talk to the residents and see what's important. It's the start of the summer to the end of the summer that really talks about what community is in the town of Stony Plain. And I think that says a lot in itself. But it doesn't just attract our community. It attracts multitudes of people from all over the place. And when I say that, we talk to people from Beaumont, we talk to people from St. Albert, from out of province. So the events that we have are very well noticed and well recognized within the community. And they all know that it's a town effort, and it's also an effort by all of our volunteers, organizations, and committees to come together to put this together. So really, at the end of the day, each one of them contributes back to the community. It draws people to our community, and it supports the local businesses so that we're able to grow in our community. And it says a lot about our community when people come here and want to build here. So it doesn't just attract people to come at a one time, it attracts them for a multitude of things. So I think it goes to say without anything that our staff do a phenomenal job. We as councillors look good because you make us look good. We're able to attend a lot of things because you have put the effort into doing it. And sometimes people forget that we get the credit, but it's really you that do it. So for me, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you, not just the SLT team that's sitting here today, but you can tell everyone in your organization that they're greatly appreciated for all they do within their community. It does not go unnoticed. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Pletchko. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo a lot of the statements that have been said around the table so far this evening, so I won't repeat them. Just a bit of a reminder, we actually have 3 weeks until we meet again because we did have one meeting canceled due to attendance at a conference. But during that time, we actually have our delegation from Shikawi here. So just huge encouragement to our residents, if you see them around town, to say hello, ask them how they're doing, ask them how they're enjoying their trip, and again, continue to support that program because as we saw a couple meetings back when we had the delegation that it went to Japan and came back, it's truly a transformative program that has a huge impact and a huge history in our community. So very much looking forward to seeing them here. That's all for me this evening. Thank you.
Yep. And thank you for bringing that up, Deputy Mayor. And to those that are kind of new to our community, this will be the 34th year we've had the Shikawi Student Exchange coming forward to town Stony Plain. So huge kudos to our volunteers, our staff, and definitely those that open their homes up for the homestay to billet our Shikawi students. Okay, for me, let's see, what do we have here? Oh, definitely Alberta Culture Days. Definitely wanted to give a shout out to Red Brick Common, the Pioneer Museum, Parkland Powers Guild, all those participants of the Taste of Stony Plain, the Stony Plain Library, and Indigenous partners and volunteers. As mentioned by members of council, it was a full day of activities. I think any member of our community that wanted to do them all probably could not because there are so many. So definitely echo the fact that we thank our volunteers and our community groups for putting those on. Speaking about the old library, I just want to say thanks to our staff. I think they were in council chambers a few months ago talking about changing some of the way that we do our horticultural stuff, so it is less maintenance for our staff to make sure it's easier. And if you're driven by the old library, the shrubs and benches have been changed to a rock garden with a bench and everything else. So again, sort of the evolution of our growing community. We're still beautifying community, but we're also making it easier for our staff to maintain and monitor those areas. So thank you to our staff for doing that. Next thing is, I don't think we meet again, but September 30th is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Town Stony Plain acknowledges that, and we take that day off to make sure that our staff have the opportunity to participate in the many events that happen in our tri-region. Again, we do host a lot, so make sure that you take the opportunity to learn a little bit about the history and what it means to move forward together as a one united world instead of against each other. And before we close off, just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Mike Morton. He was our general manager of corporate services. He applied and took the job for the interim while we were dealing with a sickness and illness. And I want to thank Teresa that has been taken over as the acting general manager in the short term while we're looking for a new one to fill that position permanently. And today, we're joined with a new face in our council chambers. So welcome to the team, Anne. Can you introduce yourself and give a little bit of brief history of who you are, where you came from, and why Stony Plain?
The big test for me was going to be the microphone, if I could turn it on. Success. Thank you, Your Worship. Well, it's been a very busy first day. I will say that I counted it as a huge success because my computer worked and my phone worked as soon as I got here. So that was great. But I'm really excited to be working with the town and with some of this great leadership here. What a huge reputation the town of Stony Plain already has. And one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, and I feel very privileged to be able to work for a town like this, is that street level governance and community and history that Stony Plain is so well known for maintaining and developing. So I'm looking forward to having a chance to contribute to that. I have a number of years as a public servant with the provincial government, so I'm hoping that I can take some of the lessons and the work that I've done there and apply some of those learnings here to the town. And my husband grew up just south of Stony Plain, so this is where he went to school and this was his community. I did grow up in the city of Edmonton, but 7 years ago we moved to a farm in Parkland County, and I can promise you that I should have moved there years and years earlier. I am a very large fan of the country lifestyle, and Stony Plain is where we get the majority of our services and also where I have some family, so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to contribute to that, starting today.
Thank you for that, and welcome to our community and welcome to the town. As you mentioned, we look forward to seeing your fingerprint on some of our endeavors going forward. Thank you. Right before I adjourn, earlier today we heard a phone go off. Councillor Hansard, when the phone goes off during a meeting, that means you are buying the first round of drinks. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.